getting coached by Terry Lamb, playing with Simon Gillies, Mitch Newton, Barry Ward, people that you'd watch for years playing for the Dogs and winning grand finals, NRL grand finals, and now they're teaching you how to be a man on the field and how to actually tackle against men and play and compete at that higher level. Yeah, I love the little message shirts, and I used to wear them on a Friday, but unfortunately we're not allowed to do it anymore. As long as you go out there and do your job, it doesn't matter what number's on your mat. I said, you're not even going to see your number anyway. The front of the jersey looks the same, so let's just put this 15 on so that you can feel comfortable and go out there and do the same job you do if you're wearing 7. So boys will prove you wrong, where girls need to show you their improvement, and you need to communicate to them. And for me, that's how I care, is by making people better as a coach. I probably made that mistake.
As a player, today's guest, Jamie Feeney, had a reputation of being a wholehearted player, got the absolute maximum out of his ability in all of those years in the NRL for the Bulldogs and the Melbourne Storm. He's also got a track record of high achievement in coaching, in teaching, in business, of course, sport. He's a talent scout still for the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs. He has his own coaching business. He's a sporting dad himself. And today you're going to learn a lot of valuable lessons, but in particular about the importance of getting those foundations right, keeping things simple. And what I really love is what he had to say about being present, removing distractions so that you can be fully immersed in whatever particular activity or environment you are in at any given moment. I'm Ian Hawkins, and this is Sport is Life. The purpose of sport, as I see it, is to see your vision become a reality. Find your voice, create strong connections, and learn to trust your body. Hey, Jamie, how are you?
Yeah, great, Ian. Really good, mate. Enjoying my second week, or the back end of my second week of school holidays, and I can't complain.
Nice. I'm sure you don't complain, but you said you got twin 5-year-old boys. I bet they keep you on your toes.
Well, they got out of the house about an hour ago, so I've been sitting back, kicking back, relaxing, and waiting for to have a chat with you. But it'll be hectic when they come back. But mate, they're lively. They're very creative. They've got a huge imagination, and they're starting this year playing footy, so they love passing the ball around in the backyard, and I'm jumping on they're jumping on the trampoline and wanting to catch the ball, and I'm like, well, you're never going to put a trampoline and catch the ball on the footy field, but that's what they want to do, so I do it with them and keep them happy.
If they're wingers, mate, well, they're not going to be a winger.
Yeah, who knows?
If they're your boys, but these days you've got to be an acrobat to play on the wing.
Mate, they're completely opposites. One of them's bloody short and skinny, and the other one's about 4 inches taller than him and very heavy set. So who knows? I could have a front rower and a fullback or a little hooker there. Who knows?
Nice. A lot of my mates growing up were Bulldogs fans, and I know that they held you in high regard because you were known to play well above you got everything out of your ability, because you were one of the hardest workers out there and physical. Is that something that it's just something that you've learned throughout life, or that particularly show up in your footy?
Oh, mate, to be honest, when I left here, so I left, and when I mean here, at Muswellbrook, where I was born and raised, and then went to school at St Joseph's High School, which I'm back teaching at now, and that's in Aberdeen. But when I left here, I left to be a teacher.
Right.
A guy sort of turned me around. A teacher from Aberdeen turned me around and got me on the straight and narrow. And not that I was a bad kid. I never failed a subject in my life, but I also was smart enough to get away with a lot of things in the bush. And then, mate, I moved down to be a teacher, and at the end of my first year of uni, I trialled for the Dogs. And honestly, I was a 78 kilo back rower that was like a string bean that that worked hard, but I think I had to work hard. My dad coached me a lot probably from 13s through to 16s, 17s. And for me to get him to say that I played well, I had to work hard, really hard. And I think that set me up. But as a 78 kilo back rower jumping into the bull, I just went to an open trial and got picked off that. It was probably the best game I've ever played in my life on that day. And it's just coincidental because there was no pressure on me really, because I wasn't invited there. I was already living down in Sydney. I was already going to uni. I wanted to be a teacher. I didn't really grow up wanting to be a footballer. But once I got the opportunity after that trial, I had to work hard, because 78 kilo back rowers these days in an under 18s then, under 18s team, they're unheard of. And even halfbacks now are 78 kilos plus.
Yeah.
And so I had to work really hard. And one thing I didn't want to do is be a player that got an opportunity and then couldn't handle it and came home. And I wanted to make sure that if the opportunity was there, which it was, and I worked hard enough, that I was going to get the most out of whatever I could. And as you said, I got the most out of my ability. I probably did. And my body, it's hurting at the moment because I'm now 47 and I'm older, and you go for a run now and you can't run for the next 2 days. But
totally worth it. Totally worth it though, right?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And I had to work hard back then because, one, I'd never lifted a weight in my life, so I had to put weight on, and that was very hard, lifting weights and doing weights, and so you learnt that you had to work hard to get the results back then. And I enjoyed running because I was lighter, but the amount of running we had to do was ridiculous. And there were no GPS units back then. There were no heart. We probably had heart rate monitors, but we had to swap watches when we were on the treadmill or on the rower or the bike to get our heart rates up and to measure our heart rates. And it was a long time ago. It's a completely different game. And all I did is I had a work ethic that I was never going to let hard work stop me. It was only if I didn't enjoy it, if I didn't like what I was doing, if I wasn't putting in, if I found that I wasn't putting in as much as I had to, then I was going to walk away. I was one of the players that it's rare, especially in this area up here, because I work a lot with young kids, and it's rare that I was one of the players that didn't grow up wanting to be a footballer.
You're right.
I found what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a teacher, and then I ended up becoming a footballer. And then I moved into coaching, and I've been doing that ever since I stopped in 2006.
Yeah, wow. Do you think that actually helped you go into that open trial without any pressure? Like you said, there was no pressure on you, but the fact that, it was like you're a teacher, you already had an element of purpose already sorted for your life, that you could just go in there and just give it everything, and it didn't matter about the outcome.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it helped me along my career, because with each contract I got as I went through, and to give you a little short version of it, I played in the under-19s team. Players in that were Corey Hughes, Brent Sherwin, Adam Perry. Then you got players like Trent Runsman, who played for the West Tigers, ended up playing for the West Tigers. We had Brett Robertson. There were players there in that team, and we were a good team. And I think we got knocked off by the Warriors, who used to scare the crap out of me because they were massive compared to the little 90-kilo bloke when he was running around by the time I was playing footy down there. But that kind of got me prepared for the next step. But it wasn't until I played reserve grade the year after, and I started in Metro Cup, which I think is the equivalent of Ron Massey Shield now. So it's that was the level below New South Wales Cup, and I started in there because I didn't quite compete with men at the start, and then once I learned to do that, by the end of that year, that 98 year, 97 was my first year, and that was Super League. It was the first time I'd ever been on a plane or anything, flying around and flying to Adelaide and Perth, the Western Reds and all those sort of teams. And then I got to Metro Cup, and you were playing in front of maybe 40, 50 people, and then the end of that year, we won. I was the reserve grade starting back rower in a Terry Lamb coached President's Cup. It was then, but we won the grand final that year. So that first 2 years of development for me taught me how to just train hard and work hard to get the results you needed to be successful on the field, but then also take the setback of going back to Metro Cup and not wearing the Bulldogs jersey, wearing a Metropolitan Cup. What were we then? They were the Bulls, the Sydney Bulls or something like that. It wasn't. And then now you're in the Bulldogs. At the end of that year, playing in a grand final at Allianz Stadium. You're playing in a grand final and you win that. Getting coached by Terry Lamb, playing with Simon Gillies, Mitch Newton, Barry Ward, people that you'd watch for years playing for the Dogs and winning grand finals, NRL grand finals, and now they're teaching you how to be a man on the field and how to actually tackle against men and play and compete at that higher level. And those first 2 years really set me up. And then the year after that, 99, I was still a part-time player, and that's where I debuted. And and those first couple of years were really, really important for me in teaching me how to the work I had to do and how you had to play to be successful at that level. And I think those years set me up for however many years I had after that.
Yeah, I love that. Can you remember some of those really important lessons from those guys that had been in there for a long time? Like, what were some of the key sort of words or lessons that you needed to learn from those guys?
I think someone like Mitch Newton, he rarely spoke, but his actions spoke a lot. Simon Gillies was the club captain in 95 when they won the grand final.
Yeah, right.
And then 3 years later, he's playing as our reserve grade captain in a reserve grade grand final. And for me, he was my position. He started on the left edge, I started on the right edge, and all I did is follow him around and just mimic the things before training. So making sure you didn't just, and it probably in under 19s we probably did that. We just turned up to training and we threw the ball around or kicked the ball around, playing a game of like footy golf at the start as a warm up and all that. When you go to that next level, and Simon Gillies and all that are like stretching. They're rolling on little foam rollers or their trigger balls or something like that. And it's getting yourself prepared to go out and train rather than just turning up to training. And I think those sort of things became more important at the back end of my career. And by the time I got down to Melbourne, those little things were the important things because one, you're getting older. So for those guys to teach me that, I doubt they did them in their first few years either, but they're doing them towards the back end. And for me to learn that sort of stuff early was really good. And also that you don't just turn up to training and get through the training session. You turn up each session and you work your butt off at whatever you had to do, whatever the coach said or whatever the thing was that your team didn't do so well last weekend. You got to work on that. And that you work on it really hard until you actually learn it, rather than just get through the training session. You actually make sure you're better by the time you step over the line after a training session. And I think that's what those guys taught me, is to be better, even though I thought at the time they knew everything and they were good at everything. And they still taught me that doesn't matter how good you are, you still can get better. And they were still trying to do that at their retirement age. And I think that was might have been the last games that both Mitch and Simon played.
Yeah, wow, how good. What an honour to finish up with them. And I'm going to come back to your shirt, but you've got on there and your shirt 1% better every day. Like that, there are all those lessons that you were learning from then, like even at the end of their career.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, at my school, we're not allowed to do it this year, but they've tightened up a little bit on our uniforms. But I would wear a different message on a Friday. As a PE teacher, we have shirts that all our staff wear for 4 days out of 5 of the week, but on the Friday you could decide which one you wanted to wear, and I would always wear a t-shirt like this. I'd have a message, because I think that sort of stuff is, and it's the attention to detail in your life too, that you need to make yourself better, and it's, I love the LSKD messages that they have on their shirts. I've got another one that says, we rise by lifting others. I've got another one that says, trust the process. And they're little things that I kind of try to live by, because I had to do that back in the time. I've done a wellbeing course that, elite athlete wellbeing course that focused on a lot of that stuff. And, and that's just to broaden my knowledge, but also how I can better my players underneath me in whatever team I'm coaching by, talking to them in a way that they understand that I care and want to make them better. Not just by coaching them, but also the way we interact, the way we talk to each other, the way we are at training, the way we communicate, all of those sort of things is trying to make them better. And I love the little message shirts, and I used to wear them on a Friday, but unfortunately we're not allowed to do it anymore.
For now. Do you think there are lessons that you learned as a teacher, or was there a pivotal coach or mentor that you had while you were playing that continued to push those positive messages into your mind?
Yeah, I actually think it's probably more the players that I played with. I had two really good coaches in, NRL coaches in Steve Folkes first, and then my last 2 years was Craig Bellamy. And the attention to my attention to detail in my coaching comes from Bellyache, definitely. I even worked as a development coach and scout up in Brisbane when I was up there over, I think that was 21, 22 and 23. And I think it's the attention to detail, and particularly the fundamentals of footy. That's mainly what I coach, is the attention to detail to those, and make sure you're getting them right. The Folkesy really taught us a work ethic, and it was really hard. It was so hard, and you work hard down in Melbourne too. But we used to train so hard that and as I said before, that no what are they called? GPS units and all that sort of stuff. So none of that. And so sometimes it was, you stopped training once you were down on your knees and you could not walk. And that was hard work, but every day you felt better. Every day you got through it, you felt better. And there was many people that stopped and couldn't get through it because it was just too hard. And those guys didn't go forward and didn't go on to be as good as they could be. And for me, I learned probably through some of the older blokes there, like Steve Price was outstanding. For me, I got to play with Brad Clyde, who I grew up loving. And Clyde, he probably got sick of me in 99, in 2000, because I was like his shadow. I just followed him around. I was in awe of him because I grew up loving him. I remember watching him in the grand final when Steve Jackson scored. I don't know what year it was. It might have been 1990 or something like that, whatever year it was. But I'm watching him play through there, and then in the end I'm playing with him. And my debut was because of the infamous horse riding accidents, and that Robbie Kearns, who I ended up playing with in Melbourne, he couldn't play, but also Brad Clyde couldn't play because they fell off these bloody horses. And my debut came because Clyde couldn't play, and I filled in for him, and for me it was like, well, same player, because I've been following him around for years and for a couple of years and trying to do exactly what he did, and he was really important. What he taught me was the importance of all the little tiny things. So if Clyde wasn't pressuring a kicker, and he was on the other side of the field where the kicker was, he would get back and have the second or third carry. So your winger would return, maybe another center or something would have a carry, and then he would be the first one back. And then by then, all the forwards all the middles are back, and they can start having a carry towards the end of the set. But all of those little things, if you go back and have a look at my career, they're all the things that I was doing, and they were little tiny things, but they made a big difference. And for me, that's what I coach up here too. That's what I coach in any team that I've ever coached. Is the importance of the fundamentals and how the little things all add up. And I think I learned that very early, and I'm very grateful to have played with Clyde, and for him to have like just sat down with me, had lunch, talked to me about all these different things that I'm learning, and even learning from him, but that he'd been doing his whole career. And they were the things that I really loved about him and why I was a fan of his before I was a teammate.
Yeah, right. And I imagine those years, because Ricky Stewart was there for a little while as well. I'm not sure if you crossed paths with him, but they would have been so
half in my debut.
Yeah, awesome. And that would have been pivotal in the success that you guys had in the following few years too, would it not?
Yeah, definitely. Rick was probably the most competitive bloke I've ever played with. If you weren't, like, I used to run off him as a back rower, and if you weren't right on the, and I mean right on the meter, so the right spot where he wanted you at that time, even if it led to a try, he'd still be up you for not being there, and that was how competitive he was. He wanted it, and it's not. He didn't want perfection, because I think he's smart enough, I think we all were, to know that you couldn't get it. You couldn't play perfect every week. There's always something. There's always something there that you're not going to know, you haven't seen before, and you can't play a perfect game. But he demanded it. He did demand it, and on many occasions that led to success for us. And probably one of the most competitive. And I think that's, he brought that to training as well. So you never really felt like you were competing with anyone at training, even though you had people in front of you that were starting, and I was coming off the bench. I never felt like we were competing, but I think Stick brought that to our club, and the fact that even in all the little games, you want to win those little games at training. You don't just want to muck around, and you don't want balls to go to the ground that should have been caught. You don't want passes to go astray that should have been easy to do and easy to execute. And I think he brought that to us. And I still think watching him on the sideline, and when he's laughing or he's jumping up and down and all that sort of stuff, or he's screaming or kicking chairs and all that, I still think, well, yeah, that's the competitive nature in your Stick, and I love it. And and although I'd find it hard to coach from the ground, like he does, mate, it's funny, but it's also it's very personal too, because he can talk to all the players, and I love it. But I haven't done it, and I'm a bit worried about getting down there for what I would say, and and how, I guess, the aggression my first reactions to errors and all those sort of things. And but he seems to do it. His players enjoy it. They get some success, and he's been there forever. So
he must he must be getting the balance right, because they're certainly playing for him, and again, they're an example of a team punching above what you would expect given the list, but he's getting something out of those young guys and the older guys. So it's pretty impressive. Just quickly, you mentioned there the trying to control yourself in those situations. You're a sporting parent too. You've got 5 kids. How did you go keeping yourself in check as a sporting parent, particularly when your older kids were first going through their sporting?
Yeah, it wasn't overly difficult because they played soccer and I've got so my older three when they were first playing sport in school, we were living on the Central Coast and the Mariners had just come in and they were so good at getting into the school system and spreading the word of the Central Coast Mariners and it was like their first, second and third years that they my kids started school. So the first thing they ever did was kick a soccer ball. So all three of them played soccer. Three older kids played soccer and one of them's still playing. She's playing for Sydney Uni. She's the club captain and which is the level, and she's playing first grade, which is the level just below A League now it's called. So she's basically playing NRL reserve grade in our game, and now I understand the game, but back then I had no idea. But I was like, yeah, good kick, don't let them around you. Just try and get your foot in front of them, and then, well, I had one of them that one of my older kids that just was a little bit clumsy, I guess, and she knocked a few of them over. But and then my young fella, he had one game. Oh, my young fella, he's not my youngest now, but he's 18-year-old now. He had one game of footy of rugby league just to have a trial when he was 4, and he ran backwards like 30 meters away from everyone and ran past the opposition try line, past the in goal, nearly ran to the fence, just running away from all these kids who followed him. But it was under 7s back then, and my ex-wife wanted to get him in early, so that's the only time he did that. Is play league. So I was quite calm with them, but then you fast forward to my twins that I've got now. They had their first game 2 weeks ago, or 2 Saturdays ago, sorry. Of under 6s, and I was their coach because how it works with 6s is the 2 coaches referee the game, right? So their coach and me as the coach here, you just play and they run all over the place and they run out and they do all these things. But that was the hardest game I've ever coached in my life. Under 6s, they all wanted to run, no one wanted to tag, that's what they do. They play tag now, not tackle. And no one wanted to go dummy half because they knew that they couldn't have a run if they went dummy half. So me trying to put people in places, and I was lifting kids up and putting them, sitting them behind. But that was the most frustrating game I've ever coached in my entire life. And I don't reckon my blood pressure came down till about 2 hours afterwards. I was still angry. I was still livid because they just would not listen. They wouldn't do as they're told. No one wanted to do what I wanted them to do. And I got angry, but I didn't yell. And but if I was on the sideline as a team coach now, some of the videos that I've had in the past of me coaching in the box, where they've used them for social media and all that. I get pretty aggressive. I'm not bellyache. I'm not bellyache aggressive. I understand that errors are made on the field, but sometimes sometimes when you've practiced something over and over and over again in training and got it right so many times, and then all of a sudden a player decides to do something out of left field, they're the things that are frustrating to me as a coach.
Yeah.
And if I was on the sideline, I'm not sure I'd be able to hold myself back.
So some more development in that area than you're saying.
Yeah, definitely. It's just that initial reaction that, I don't think everyone needs to listen to that on the sideline. But no, I'm learning as a coach too, and I think every time you coach, doesn't matter if I'm coaching kids this afternoon or individually or I'm coaching a team. You try to learn from making mistakes, or you try to learn a better way to do things so that each kid can get the most out of their time with you, whether they're in a team environment or individually or competitively at school or wherever it is.
Yeah, it's good. Those days when you did get success, like, well, actually 2002, like, you have all that taken away. What was that experience like? That it must still have some sort of impact now, thinking back at it.
Yeah. I mean, it does. I was, I'd played, when was it? It was 99 I debuted, and I played 6 games straight. I think 2000 I played 18 out of 24 or 25 games we played, and then I played every game in 2001, 2 and 3, right? And so that the whole salary cap scandal and all that sort of stuff, I had no idea. Like, back then, no one spoke about what they were on. No one spoke about their contracts and things like that. Nowadays, they're a lot more transparent. All the stuff that's going on at the moment, talking about contracts and of some of the halves and the young kids coming through now. No one really spoke about that. So back then, like, we were a really quality team. Back then, we had a lot of good players, but we also played really well as a team. And to win, like, we won 17 straight. Hazen's kick from the sideline against the Knights to win that 16th game and get us in line to win our 17th, which we did the week after. Things like that, they're really good memories. And then to not be able to play in the semis and be able to take that form in to the semis and hopefully win a premiership, that really hurt, and it still does. I mean, you talk about it now and you still remember what it was like back then and how you felt back then and how disappointed it was. And I vowed to not really, I didn't really want to watch the semis back then. I didn't want to watch who we could have played, who we could have beat and all that sort of stuff. But in the end, you end up, as a long time follower and fan of rugby league, you end up watching them anyway. But for me back then too, it was my daughter, my eldest, was born in 2002. She was born in September 2002. So I had that sort of thing. I had that to, I don't know, take my mind away, to prioritize, and it's really what I focused on. I focused on making sure everything was right at home and making sure we were planning and prepared and ready for them. And that took my mind away from footy. Although we still had to go to training every day, you'd leave and you'd be just focused on knowing that, by September your footy season's over. But you're going to have a little one come along. And I had that to focus on, which kind of distracted me, but it was a good distraction. And it's, as I said, it still hurts because we didn't get a chance to take our the opportunity and our success through that year into the semis. And it wasn't. I can easily say it was no fault of our own, but it wasn't. Like, none of us knew. And I think back then, I don't even think some of the boys knew how they were getting paid. When we sat down and had a chat about it, they just knew they were getting paid and that they'd signed contracts and how the club did everything behind the scenes and got that money into our accounts. No one really checks that. It's just that it happens. You sign a contract, you're getting this amount of money, you get that every month. And I don't think anyone was really understood exactly what was going on. And we all took pay cuts for each other, to try and stay there and try and get back under the salary cap and be able to play in there. But in the end, it didn't work out for us. And thank God my eldest Maya come along on the 25th of September, and I had something else to celebrate.
Yeah, and I mean, having my first child, it changes everything about your mindset, and you've suddenly got something that goes well beyond career and sport.
Oh, definitely.
I can see how that would have eased the pain. It still must hurt, as you rightly pointed out.
It does. But life, you realise in those times that, once you had a child, and again, I've got 5 of them now, life's not always about you anymore. And so, the priority's not just yourself. You've got, you've got a partner to look after, you've got a child to look after, or children to look after, and then and your perspective changes, and your focus can change, and you have to be really good at I don't know, it's not compartmentalizing your thoughts or anything, but it's just knowing where you are, what role you're playing right now, and how to be the best at that role while you're in it. And then, like I'm talking to you now, this afternoon I'll be coaching kids. I have to be really good at that and have to be focused on that while I'm with them. Otherwise, they're not going to get the value out of me, and they're not going to get the outcome they're looking for. And then tonight I'll be back as a parent in front of the TV watching the footy, and hopefully my boys are either close to bed by then or sitting up ready to sit up and watch the game with me. But that's how it is, and you got to try to focus on who you are at that time, because in my life anyway, I'm a coach, I'm a teacher, and I'm a parent. And and then sometimes you're a mate when you're out with your mates or for dinner, and that's a good part of being home now, is I'm catching up with my old mates that I grew up with and going out for dinner, and then you focus on them and who you are, and playing the best role of that person that you are right then. And I think that's what I do. I try to focus on in my life, playing so many roles.
Love it. That's so good. And I think for the people listening who would be in that same boat, whether they're coaches or parents or however their career goes, that's a great point to have that presence in whatever it is you're doing. Were you there? You were there in 2004, but did you play in the grand final?
No, I didn't. I was leaving. I was leaving to go to Melbourne. So I went to Melbourne in 2005 and 2006. And I think I signed to go in about June or July. It might have been before June 30 deadline. And so I kind of went, as I said before, I played every game 2001, 2 and 3. I think I played 78 games straight for the Dogs, no injuries or anything. And I had to work hard on that. And as I said earlier, I had to learn how to train hard and get pretty in really good physical condition, because I ended up playing first grade as a 93 kilo back rower, after starting as a 78 kilo back rower, and that's as heavy as I could get. And I guess I kind of worked hard through that period, and I wanted to stay a one club player, but I think a few things with Folksy. Folksy was a really good coach, and he made us work hard and all that, but he wasn't a great communicator off field, and so there was a few little differences in understanding why I wasn't getting picked for some games, or why I'd only played 10 minutes in some games and all that. And I'd ask the question, he's it's just how the game went. And I kind of a few things where I wasn't happy with. And so then I signed to go in June to go to Melbourne. And I think I'd played majority of the games up until then. And then, as teams do now, folks, he started looking to the years ahead. He started looking to 2006, and that's when players like JT started getting on the Johnny Thurston started getting on the bench for us, and he started moving away. We were always a club that, all the time I played, almost had 4 forwards on the bench each time. You'd never really rotate your outside backs or your halves, but you'd have 4 forwards, and then and we'd never even sometimes have a second hooker. We'd just have someone that fill in while Adam Perry or Corey Hughes or someone, even back when I was playing with Jason Hetherington, when they just needed a 10-minute spell. So someone would just fill in for 10 minutes, and then you just come back on. They'd come back on. But that was that point, and I warmed up throughout the week. I warmed up on game day. I trained throughout the week as being thrown in, and because Pricey missed out, I thought, this is my chance. Like, I might get a chance to get on, because normally folks who would replace a forward who's out with another forward, and unfortunately, I think it was our captain's run. The day before the game, and Folksy comes up and said, "Oh, Jimmy, I'm not going to play tomorrow. I'm going to play JT instead." So, and JT, I think might have only got 13 to 15 minutes or something in that grand final, but he got to play in it. And who knows? I always say this: who knows? Imagine if I got that chance, then I could have been as good as JT. But unfortunately,
very good. Does that?
It was definitely disappointing, but it was probably, to be honest with you, it was probably years after that, when I was in Melbourne, that I realised that we all played a part in that grand final. Because that we back then I couldn't think about it, because I was you have your little selfish head on, and I'm like, oh man, I should have signed my contract later, or I should have just waited to make an announcement or a decision or something like that. You always think like that, and what did I do wrong? But in the end, we all got the team prepared, and it wasn't until I went down to Melbourne that I realised that, because they've got a whole different mentality down there, and it was a mentality we had at the Dogs, but you probably didn't notice it until you end up missing out on things. And as I said, I played 78 games straight. I was missing out on nothing for quite some time, and so you just think, I'm part of this team. I'll play again this week and all that. And you get into sort of that mindset that you're doing your job, and you just focus on your job, and you get it done, and you'll stay there. And then when things go against you, you just realise, right, it's my job now to prepare the team to play against this team. Even though I'm not in it, I've got to do the best version of an East back row or a Canberra back row, and train against them like these players would, so that I can prepare them to win these games. And I think I realised that a few years late, but it's something that I still preach today to kids, and a lot of kids, especially at school, they even don't want to wear a different jersey. Yeah, just the kids at school now, they, if they're playing halfback, they want to wear 7, even if the jersey doesn't fit them. And I'm like, oh mate, you might have to wear 15, because that 7 doesn't look very good on you. It's a bit tight, and because you're a bigger kid, and they go, no, I have to wear 7. I'm like, well, as long as you go out there and do your job, it doesn't matter what number's on your mat. I said, you're not even going to see your number anyway. So, the front of the jersey looks the same. So let's just put the 15 on, so that you can feel comfortable and go out there and do the same job you'd do if you were wearing 7. So, that's how it happens. And as long as you're going out there and doing your job, and I learned that as a player, and I still preach that as a coach right now, and a teacher. And a lot, teaching and coaching is very similar. It's all about communication and knowing who you talk to, and who you're talking to, and how to talk to them the best, so that you can educate them the best on whether it's their passing ability or their tackling, or it's their handwriting and spelling. It doesn't change, and you've just got to find out the best way to get the best out of every individual that's in front of you.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I wanted to ask about the teaching. As a PE teacher myself, I know that it definitely feels easier to be able to build those relationships in that sporting environment. Obviously, there's still classroom subjects part of that as well. But what are some of those things you use that you've learned as a teacher that are going to help people as parents, as coaches, to be able to connect with kids that maybe aren't as engaged as some of the others?
I think it's getting to know them more. Getting to know them, put them in different situations, and it's hard. What I do understand about teaching is, I'm glad I'm a PE teacher, I'm not an English teacher or a maths teacher, that everything has to be in the classroom, because kids can't sit there that long. So in my classes, even in the theory stuff, if we sit down for 10 or 15 minutes, and the kids are just sitting there, and they might be talking. What I tend to do is I don't just put things up on the board that they have to write, just rote learn or just write down and it make it boring. I make things into conversation so that I test their understanding through questioning, through answers, telling stories, giving experiences. And if they ever are sitting down for too long, I get up and we go, right, Billy, you're leaning on your chair, that it's going to break or you're going to fall or something. So get back down, and then you'll get a physical punishment. So then we hit them up. I do some physical punishment. If they're late, I get physical punishments, and they get up moving around. And I try to make it as interactive as I can, because kids' brains, and especially kids' brains these days, because they've got so many things to stimulate their brains. They've got phones that can research anything they want. They've got they can all these different apps and that on their phones that they can do a dance for someone else and show them. They can take a photo and send them to them in real time and things like that. And their brains are so active already that they can't sit down for more than 5, probably 8-10 minutes and take all this stuff in, because they're thinking about something else. And so you just try to you try to question, you try to turn them into as personal experiences as you can. You try to use their experiences and yours to be able to teach them lessons and what they're supposed to learn. And you do your best to know each of those kids as personally as you can, so that you know them as students and you can tap into how they learn and make sure that you're giving each of them an opportunity to learn in every one of your lessons. And it's not always easy. Sometimes you'll get half the kids will learn a lot in one lesson because you are sitting there communicating. Maybe they're watching something visual. And then the other ones that are actually more doers, you get them up and you start to teach them what they learn, what they need to learn by actually acting it out and even being in a little role play or something like that, because doing is the way that they understand. And and that's just how you mix up all the things that you do in your classroom. So it's not just you're not just sitting down and because then their brains go all over the place, and they're not present with you.
Yeah, it's so good. And that would be something like treating them based on the different communication styles. That would be something that, from my experience, is not used enough, particularly in the coaching environment. So it's great to hear that you're not only teaching that, but you're using that in your coaching business as well. The bit that I can tell you're still passionate about is in that coaching environment, coaching other coaches. So the game's changed a lot, even in the last 5 years, but there are some things that remain remain. So tell us a little bit about you and your player and coach development work. And one of this you said beforehand is, the coaches are often surprised at just how simple things need to be to get the best results.
Yeah, that's right. We play a simple game. We just tend to make it more and more difficult. And the fact is, up in the bush and in any regional areas, coaches don't have the access to the higher levels of coaching and development that they need. And so when I came back here, I realized that, one, because I've got older kids, that live 3.5 hours away from me that play their own sport, I can't coach a team every weekend because otherwise I miss out on going down and seeing them. So that's one thing. So then, but also, two, I don't want to just focus on 17 players. If I did coach a team that are in front of me, I'd rather be working on developing players that want to go to that next level, and the aspiring kids and also the aspiring coaches that I can get in front of and teach them so that they can get in front of their 17 players or 20 odd players and teach the things that I teach to them down through their players and through their system. So my business that I started up here is going well. I'm teaching. The youngest I've taught is an 8-year-old kid how to pass and catch because he wasn't doing it properly. But it was just, and now he is. I'm teaching my under sixes, and they're just teaching how to run with the ball in two hands because you stick it under one hand and everyone knows what you're doing and knows where you're running and they know you're never going to pass and all those little things. And the funny thing is, a lot of coaches up here, they don't understand those things because they've never had the opportunity to be in development systems or any higher systems. And it's the fundamentals. I've got my own, as you said, Jamie Feeney player development and mentoring business up here. And I wanted to focus on those aspiring kids, but also the coaches. And I've run a really successful coach the coaches program, and I'm running another one that starts in about 3 weeks. That and it's been positive that the people that have been in it have loved it, but it's also they've realised that it's just really simple things that you have to focus on getting right for you to then be able to do any advanced things. Otherwise, your kids, if let's say, and I've seen it a lot, a coach of a 13 to 14-year-old team coaches off Friday night footy, what they see on the TV. Well, if they try to put those plays together with their team, one, they don't have enough time to train it into their players. They get an hour a week or an hour and a half or twice a week, and whereas the NRL players get all day every day, or most week to train it all, and they've done it against opposition, and whether it's their own opposition at training or as the opposition on the weekend, and they have to start to teach the kids the things that they need to be able to do that, rather than just teach them the play that they're doing. Otherwise, they fail, or they drop the ball, or they run the wrong line, or they throw the wrong pass or something, and then their players get disappointed with, and their coach gets disappointed, and they tell them what they did wrong rather than what they needed to do better. And the kids don't enjoy that training or that part of the game. And we need to be able to teach all those basics really, really well, so that then the advanced stuff becomes easier for the kids, rather than just jumping straight to the end product. You need to, you need to trust the process, and you got to go through the process of teaching them all those things before the end product can be successful and keep them engaged and keep them enjoying the game and wanting to get better and feel that what it feels like when it actually works. And too many times, particularly with inexperienced coaches, they jump to the end product. And all I do in my coaching program is teach all the basics, and in many different ways you can get the same outcome from doing different things.
Yeah, well, I see the same problem in soccer. They did these different licenses. They come back with all this complex knowledge, and then they overcomplicate it. And it's like like you said, simple game. And sometimes I don't know whether that's an ego thing or whether they feel like they need to fit too many things in. But all sport's simple at its essence. Like where particularly at that level, it's just get back to the basics. And
if you can peel it back and get them really good at those, really the fundamentals, then they're the things that even scouts and from any talent scouts or any recruiters from any teams, whether it's a coach that's a schoolboys coach that wants to see wants to watch a school game to be able to pick a representative team or something like that, or it's an NRL team looking coming up and watching the country championships up at Tamworth because they want to try and find a back rower from their region. It's a Bulldogs region up here, and so and I'm a scout there. I look for whether they're good at the little things, not whether they're great at the big plays and whether or not they can put up a Matt Burton 50-meter bomb, but they miss 3 tackles because their tackle technique's not there. So what scouts tend to look for are the easy things that they can save some time later on when they throw you into that system. They can save some time developing and showing you how to do all of these things properly, because you're a big, strong person who can run around people, or run straight over people. But if you can't pass and catch, then at the line, then you're not going to last there. Little things like that. And it's very surprising. A lot of the kids and a lot of the coaches are really surprised at how simple some of the things are that I'm teaching them, and why they don't know them already.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. You mentioned the important messages you got from your dad and how hard it was to impress him. Just goes to show what an impact you can have as a parent, as a coach, as a teacher, and there's a word you used before. You talked about showing that you care, but those sort of things, the foundations, and also with that approach, that's what's going to have the biggest impact on them later in their career and their life, right?
Yeah, it is. And I think I've made some mistakes in the past, and I think I made that mistake when I coached the Titans girls in NRLW. In their first year, we made the semi-finals, and then what I focused on was what they could get better at the next year, rather than also communicating and showing them that I cared by showing them how I think all the good things that they did too, and what they bring to the team. I sort of spoke about them, but then I showed them how I cared, and that's how I showed them that I cared, is by making them better player. And I think that's how coaches do it. And I think I made that mistake back with them, that I probably showed a bit more of what they needed to improve on, rather than what they brought to the team. And that's the big difference in males and females. And I think coaches show they care by making you a better player. So if I'm coaching you and your hands aren't up when I pass you the ball, because you're not giving me a target or something like that, I'll tell you, let's get a target up there. Let's get your hands up there. You can, there's many advantages of that. Early catch, early pass, all those sort of things. And for me, that's me caring about you to show you that you can be a better player and making you a better player. But if I did that, then you as a male will just turn around and go, okay, right, I'm going to show him now. I'm going to show him I can do that. That's easy. I can just get my hands up there. I can move the ball on. If you're a female, Feeney just said, that I'm not getting my hands up. Do I get my hands up? And the girls say, yeah, no, you get your hands up. So then they try to get support from their teammates, and that's the difference. The boys will show you, I think, will really show you by showing that what you said he can work on and get done. And then girls, you have to show more care and support around by saying, okay, can you see that do you understand that your hands aren't up when the ball passes? And they go, oh no, I don't. I said, well, I'll throw you this ball and see where you're at. And then you have to break it down to the point where they fully understand it. And then they know. And then when they start doing it, you give them a pat on the back and let them know that, you're doing really well. Whereas boys will prove you wrong, where girls need to show you their improvement, and you need to communicate to them. And for me, that's how I care, is by making people better as a coach. I probably made that mistake back then, that and I've certainly changed the way I do it. The fact that I sort of told them showed them how I cared by telling them what they need to do better. I just didn't give them the pats on the back afterwards and show them that it worked. It's a lesson I've learned. But I think that's how coaches show they care, and is by making people better. And for me, that's what that's what coaching is.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how you coach them, what you're coaching, as long as they're becoming better from your education, then you're doing a good job.
Yeah, and the fact that you can have that awareness around it and call it out and say, I made these mistakes. To me, that's what separates the best as well, because you've got to be able to acknowledge it, and you've got to, and then own it, and then be able to do something about it. I want to come back to your shirt. What do you do now to get 1% better as a dad, a husband, a coach, a teacher? Like, if that's something you live your life by, what are those sort of things that you do that you know will lead you to be better in all those areas as well?
Yeah, well, if I try to separate each of them, teaching, I'm kind of a coach that teaches, not a teacher that coaches. And so I try to learn off the people around me, and there are so many experienced people. Believe it or not, my leader of learning, or my head teacher of PE, taught me when I was at school. And I finished in 1995. So, he's been there for 32 years.
Amazing.
So I try to talk to him. I try to find out ways to do things better. I try to, and again, to be a better teacher. Because I left, as I said, I left here to go to be a teacher. In the end, I became a footballer. I taught for 4 years before I went full time in pathways management and coaching at state and national levels, and then I went back to teaching, and it wasn't easy. But I'm learning as a teacher. As a coach, I watch things. I watch, I watch not necessarily. I watch games, but I also watch, if I don't have the time, I watch the breakdown of games by people like your Matty John's podcast that he does with Coop, who, they're two of the smartest footballing brains, that are out there. So for them to be able to share all that information, and they're both been halves, and I was never a half. So I learn a lot off them and how they look at games and break down games. So as a coach, I do that. As a parent, I learn from my mistakes a lot. I try to be as calm and as present with the kids as I can. I try to talk to my older kids as often as I can. And I'll talk to them at least once a week, the three of them, and it's not, and that's individually, once a week, just to see how their week's been and all that. And I try to do that regularly, and making sure I'm connecting with them still, even though they're 4 hours away. And and then I guess as a partner, I'm probably learning on the run as well. As I said, I've had 2 marriages, and I've learned from the first one, and I'm still learning every day for the second one. And I think the day that you think that you know everything, that's the day when problems start coming up. And then you're not developing your knowledge or your experience, or you're not growing. And I feel like I've got a real growth mindset, and that I'll take things on, and if they work for me, I'll keep doing it. If they don't, I'll learn from the experience and keep getting better.
Well said. Love that answer. Just before we wrap up, Jamie, you spent some time, as you said, in Melbourne. I've had a couple of ex-Storm players on, probably mates of yours, Brett White, Ben Cross. Yeah, they talked about some of the lessons that they learned in that environment, and it's well documented that they do things differently and better in a lot of ways. You can't not, with that level of sustained success that they've had from back in those days when you were there. What is there a particular lesson that maybe is not just sport, but a life lesson you learned in those years down there that you could pass on to the listeners?
Yeah, I think Melbourne's a very unique place for a rugby league player. So majority of them, besides a couple that have come through now, that were born down there and are playing down there. Like I think Sewer was from down that way, and I think there's another guy that Aaron Irami, or I can't remember how he spell his name. I had to say his name, but I think they might have come from Melbourne, but everyone else has had to move down there. And when we're in Sydney, when you live in Sydney and your teammates, like we had several groups. We had some that used to go, that were from the eastern suburbs, your Brace and Rennie Mature and Willie Mason that lived there. We had other family ones that were sort of over in a different region, and so you'd maybe catch up with them, but then you sort of had other friends from home or from outside, or I had uni friends that I used to catch up with. But down in Melbourne, you're sort of isolated. And one thing I think that Melbourne has as a massive advantage is the fact that they're almost anonymous down there. Even your best players, your Cam Munsters, your Jerome Hugheses, your Pappenhausens and all that, they might get known, they might get seen at the shops and recognised by 1 in 30 people. But and so what you can do down there, which takes your mind off football to no end, is you can go home, you can be a dad, and then just focus on being a dad. You can go home and be a partner. You can go home, or you can go to TAFE and study at night or whatever, something like that, and you can just be who you are or who you're trying to be at that moment. And I think in Sydney you kind of couldn't. I wasn't a very well-known person in Sydney, but after the 2004, the Coffs Harbour scandal, and also the 2002 and the salary cap, people started to recognise you. So you'd go to the shops, and then you'd see people turning their heads and sort of having a chat, and then having a second look back at you and things like that, just recognising who you are. Or down in Melbourne, it's 1 in 30 people would know what any of those people are. And I think it's a really big lesson there, is that you can then go out and you're not a footballer all the time. So you don't have to put up this footballing persona, tough, whatever persona that you are on the football field. You don't have to do that. And so you get to have a break from being a footballer, which I think, especially in this day and age, with social media and all those sort of things, I think that is a really, really good release for you. And it gives you a break from just focus on football all the time. And don't get me wrong, when you get to football training, your footy head has to be on, otherwise bellyache and the coaching staff and all that will rip in, and you'll be punished if you need to, physically or mentally, or however it has to be. But what they do down there is they do the outside things and the family things, and they connect you like nothing else. And that connection helps you on the field, definitely, because you have a lot of experiences. Everyone moves down there. They might have kids. They might not have kids, but they've got partners, and they do the social side of things really well and make sure you're all connected, so that you can as connected as you can be on the football field. And and I think that's what I've tried to do too with my any teams that I've had, and even the New South Wales Combined Catholic Colleges team last year that won. Getting their families together on day one and making sure they all knew each other, so that they weren't sit next to someone at the game and not knowing who they were, even though they were supporting the same team. Little thing. Those things, I think, for the team, it makes you follow your wear on that jersey.
Yeah, I love that, because I think that's something that's important as a player, to be able to know each other beyond the game, but to bring in the family, particularly at that younger age, it's crucial. It's some of the work I've been doing more recently is with exactly that. Is like, okay, you want me to work with your child, but we're going to have to do some work on you too, so that we can get you pulling in the same direction. And yeah, so I love that that's a part of the coaching you do as well. So good. Just to be clear,
it's super important. It's super important because that connection, like you can have players that play in a team and they'll just play as a team member, and they'll then, and I've had some of them. I had some of them at the Dogs, but very rarely had any of them at Melbourne. I was only there for 2 years though. But you'd have them, they just come to train and then they go off, and you would not know anything about them besides how good they could tackle, how good pass and catcher they were. And it's important that when push comes to shove in the really tough games that you're knowing as much as you can about your teammates, so that you will work as hard as you possibly can for them. You get to know your players as much as you can so that you're working as hard, and you're willing to work as hard for them as they are for you. And I think knowing them as personally as you can and their situations and their environment is the key to the connection you need to have a really good side.
Love it. Just to be clear, you physical punishment, you mean getting them to do a physical activity rather than maybe what physical punishment was when we were growing up, right?
Yeah, that's right. No, you can't do that anymore. The cane's been gone from school. I remember my dad telling me the few times that he got it, but no, it's more just, the kids actually make it up. They make it fun. If they come in 3 minutes late, they might do 30 push-ups, or sometimes it's 15 burpees or something like that, and all the kids get to watch them. And the physical punishment it's quite funny sometimes.
Yeah, it's good. Love it. Well, I can tell from this conversation how much you do care and how much of an impact you'd already be having as a teacher and as a coach and as part of your family as well. So I appreciate you coming on, sharing that expertise and knowledge, Jamie, and some of your story. Yeah, it was fantastic to hear.
My pleasure, mate, and loving the podcast, so keep it up.
Cheers, mate.
Some great lessons there from Jamie today. The first one, to add to your game plan, like it says in his shirt, 1% better every day. Keep making those incremental improvements. Do that by building on your foundations, keeping things simple. Another lesson he talked about was how important it is to have presence, to be whoever you need to be in any situation with whoever you're with. Remove those distractions. And a great way to do that was by showing that you care. He talked about that from a coaching perspective, as a teacher, as a parent, as a partner. All fantastic lessons to add to your game plan. And if you're looking to create a more detailed game plan about your future, one that you can do for yourself, but also sit down and do with your teenager, then check out my game plan training. I'll leave the link in the show notes. Would love to see you part of the group. You've taken the time to listen to this whole episode. Now it's time to take action. Commit to one thing you've learned today and make it happen. And to avoid any obstructions, join the Sport is Life movement by clicking on the link in the show notes.